You're listening to the Nerd to Know Media Network. Join us at nerdtoknowmedia.com.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to Anime Crash Course. With me this month we have Keith.
Hey, how you doing?
How's it going, man? How's it been?
Pretty great. As always, I'm super excited to talk about this.
Yeah, because this is a very special one. So this being now the jolly month of December, I thought we had to get a little bit Christmassy. And the only Christmas anime I can really think of that's worth talking about is, of course, the 2003 magnum opus, Satoshi Kon's Tokyo Godfathers. However, we are going to side roll that for a hot minute because it would be a crime against God and anime if we didn't spend a little bit of time talking about the man, the myth, the legend, Satoshi Kon.
Oh, just an absolute hero.
The
greatest.
He's one of the greatest I wouldn't even say anime directors, flat out.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of just in cinema, he just a true legend. Okay, so I suppose we'll begin at the beginning. So Kon is a widely beloved and iconic animator, director, screenwriter, and mangaka from Hokkaido in northern Japan. He got a start as an animator in kind of smaller projects like Rojin Z and Hashiri Melos back in the early 90s. And he also did a little bit of manga work in Young Magazine with a little known name. You might have heard of him, Katsuhiro Otomo, the guy that wrote Akira.
Hell yeah.
Thus starting the sheer laundry list of icons that Kon has worked with over his time, which is it's insane just how many he was worked with. Like later on in his manga career, he created the manga Seraphim with Mamoru Oshii, who went on later then to create Ghost in the Shell.
It's really just phenomenal how he was not only one of the greatest, but he worked with all the greatest.
Yeah, I don't know if that speaks more just kind of him as a creator or just the scene, like the media anime manga scene just of that kind of early 90s that was just cultivated, because that was kind of the boom of this kind of golden age where you have now suddenly like legacy animators back from like the 60s when anime was just anime had started to boom are now legacy creators now training in these new talents that they're bringing their own sense of creativity, and the scene was still kind of like wild. Nobody could pin down really a basic theme or structure or tropes for it. So you just got all these wild creatives kind of coming out the gate, like Oshii and Kon, just throwing everything at the wall. So I think it's kind of, it was just this perfect storm that kind of created all of these people, definitely.
Oh, absolutely. And even with the diversity of what each of them had done at that time, like it wasn't like they were all doing battle animes or they were all doing like moe stuff. They all had vastly different stuff, and they all had hands in each other's work. Or like you could at least see, like just everyone's connected.
Like it was a small enough space that it seemed like everyone kind of knew each other at the time. And as I said, like there was no real kind of tropes holding the genre together. So it was just and like that's obviously kind of ties into Japan's economic growth at the time, which just allowed this complete explosion of media creativity.
Yeah, and the creativity also seems to have absolutely been like allowed. No, it does. None of his work or none of the work coming out at that time felt like it had producers' hands in it, and didn't feel like they were playing to what audiences expected, because the industry itself was booming, and they were allowed. It seems like they were just allowed to do whatever they wanted and tell any story they wanted, and they seem to have taken full advantage of this.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I think it is fair to say that like it's real difficult to like pin down what kind of director Satoshi Kon was. Like, cause it obviously to kind of talk about like what his kind of his directorial work, because that's, you know, obviously the guts of his legacy. His first movie out the gate was Perfect Blue, which is a instant classic, like psychological thriller. Like, do take no matter how much we talk about Tokyo Godfathers later on, take this as me recommending literally anything by Satoshi Kon. um,
Everything, not only anything, everything.
everything.
It's all essential viewing. Like, I cannot overstate that. It even goes to show when you look at Western directors taking huge influence. Like, you can argue that, you know, Black Swan is Perfect Blue, and that Paprika is Inception. Like,
Oh, like
like
it
everyone,
as
like,
much as Christopher Nolan might obfuscate how much he took from Paprika, Darren Aronofsky has stated black and white. I pulled these themes from Perfect Blue. He has gone on record saying he wanted to make a Perfect Blue movie, like live action movie.
really,
So,
I did
oh
not know
yeah,
that.
no, I think as far as I know, I was reading that in something. He was like Aronofsky did try to get the rights for Perfect Blue at some point. I don't know if that was before or after Black Swan, but like we have very kind of clear Western directors taking influence. But yeah, so to go back then to kind of Cohen, so obviously he came out with Perfect Blue, which is this it's just phenomenal psychological thriller on the self and the self you present to the media, which was mind-boggling at the time, but has only become more present with social media, and it's insane, and it's one of the greatest movies, anime movies, just ever created. But not to rest on his
Yeah, like,
laurels too
uh,
much,
uh,
he then went on to make his second movie, Millennium Actress, is not a horror, but is more of a kind of a surrealist drama.
yeah. I think Millennium Actors is an extremely hard film to describe to someone. I always do to say it's like my granny telling me stories of her youth and how she grew up, and it's just this really bittersweet. But it's, as you're saying, it is a drama, but it's like all
I
of his stuff has this sort of underlying thing of like bittersweetness. It's all
Yo, yeah.
real gentle.
I'm definitely underselling it and saying drama, but I think that's if I had to tag one thing onto it, that's probably the best. Because again, it's like, as I said, while he could have made his living making thrillers with how successful and how well directed Perfect Blue was, like he went against the grain, didn't make another horror, and just made this globe spanning just life story of this woman.
Yeah.
And so after that, then, and again, then to take another just swerve left field, his third movie, which is the subject of the video, he makes a Christmas comedy.
Just, you know, as I was saying, it seems like they were just allowed to do whatever they wanted. They were not getting pigeonholed, especially not Con. Like, the only thing that's really consistent in his films is sort of a female perspective, and that's about it, really.
Yeah, and like that's and he went on record saying that, like, he always planned between all of his movies, actually, like between Perfect Blue, Millennium Actress, The Godfathers, and Paprika, like he always intended to have female fronted stories because that was against the grain, and especially like particularly coming from like kind of a male auteur as himself, like it always he was always kind of just trying to be bold and be different, and
Yeah,
especially with
and it worked.
how those female leads are represented. Like I think we'll get into that when we're talking about kind of the characters in Tokyo Godfathers, definitely. But like Miki in Perfect Blue is not any way a standard female anime protagonist. She is so rich and deep with layers and complexities and anxieties and insecurities. It's incredible that frankly, it's incredible that a man could write a woman like that. I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, and like you can even see him like essentially making fun of typical female stereotypes in anime media, in like the roles she plays, and in those terrifying, disgusting but amazing dream sequences where she's
Oh God, yeah.
acting
Oh, like
Like they're a
Cohen.
hard watch, but that man like understood exactly. Look how creepy what
But
user
just
doing
the
is.
depths of the possibilities of it. Like it doesn't come up much in Tokyo Godfathers, but in a lot of his pieces, like in Perfect Blue and in Paprika, he just dissects and gets to the root of the otaku fandom, um,
Yeah,
exploring, because he said himself, like he doesn't relate to like how a lot of the fandom, he doesn't believe in what a lot of the fandom at the time was kind of standing for kind of this obsessive idol culture. Um, but I think as time went on, particularly like comparing, say, some of the characters in Perfect Blue to Paprika, he understood that while he was definitely against it and wrote it to kind of satire against it, he understood that like a lot of his staff writing it were these people. So there's a weird evolution of kind of his beliefs as time went on there, and comparing some characters between Perfect Blue and Paprika.
yeah. The two most obvious people to like those movies actually illustrate that, just the difference between the two otakus really in that, the two obsessive characters in both of those. Uh, yeah, vastly different. It shows a great change in how he, what he thought about them. At least that's how I see it.
Oh yeah. Oh, like
I
there's
like I'm speaking
there's
for someone else, but
we could like we could probably make a whole episode of pair, because there is a very kind of like sisterhood of Perfect Blue Paprika, of how Paprika reflects on Perfect Blue. Like that's a whole other rabbit hole we could very well go down. But I think before we completely lose the plot here, just to kind of go back on the rails a little bit. So
yeah,
just to finish off our section on Satoshi Kon, unfortunately, it is with grave sadness that I have to mention that Cohen did pass away in 2010 from a very sudden bout of pancreatic cancer. Truly, just leaving the world with an A+ repertoire and a gaping hole in creativity.
yeah, and it's that typical story of he genuinely wasn't appreciated in his own time, and it wasn't until afterwards that people started recognizing him for the genius he was. Like none of his stuff was very successful, like financially, but it's
No, like
all
it was critical and he won awards, but like yeah, it wasn't blockbuster or as well known
yeah.
as it is now.
Oh, I was about to say, even when we were discussing when you told us what the topic of this episode was, I was surprised at how little of like how the others hadn't actually heard of it, which makes sense. But at the same time, I think just I like since I saw Perfect Blue, I just immediately went and watched like everything that was out. Like probably in the same week, like I think he's still pretty under recognized, but I hope that changes. Like this man deserves all the respect and the you know the like he deserves all the praise we're just heaping on him, like
Oh,
without a
easily,
doubt.
easily. Like this, there's a reason I decided to dedicate like nearly the first half of this episode to him. Just it's like like if I want to achieve one thing with this episode, it is definitely to get the word out to anyone who somehow does not know. Watch Satoshi Kon. That's the mission statement here. So I suppose uh, without any further ado, before we get into the main event, fun factoid as well. Before Cohn went and created Perfect Blue, he obviously got to start doing some smaller kind of animator jobs. One of his first credits is on the 1993 JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stardust Crusaders OVA, which again, just another just name tacked against the wall, that early 90s sphere. That's just so weird to me because that's a really bad OVA.
It yeah, and it's the furthest thing from anything he'd ever made. Like for that to be one of his first jobs,
Yeah,
just
no, I think
it's
he was
unthinkable.
only tangentially involved. I think he was He was a storyboard artist on a couple of them, and I think he did direct the animation on one episode. But it sounded very much that he was just an animator in the room when they got the JoJo's license. But yeah, it's another just odd legacy that this man managed to get himself wrapped up in. But that now brings us to the main feature of this episode, which is Ho 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 Merry Christmas. It is, of course, his 2003, as I mentioned, comedy Christmas movie, Tokyo Godfather. So
the single greatest Christmas movie ever made. I will stand behind this. Like, I'm not even going to wait till the end before I'm going to be like, just watch this. It's the best.
Oh, it's absolutely, like, it is 100% in like my yearly Christmas viewing, up there with Die Hard.
Yeah,
that's for
like,
me.
Oh, of course. No, even before coming on to record this, I was talking to my brother, and he was like, "Oh, so what are you doing for tonight?" I was like, "I'm recording a podcast." What's it on? And I said, "It's that movie about the." I basically described the plot to him. He's like, "Oh, that film you've been trying to talk to me about for years. I'm glad you found someone." He's just sick of me pushing this film on him, and he will not watch it.
Oh,
I'm going to get him.
One of the I believe you just gotta stealth him. You just gotta sit him down and be like, yeah, we're gonna watch, I don't know, Die Hard. And then you just pop that Blu-ray in, and then you can't escape.
Exactly, and that's it. Like, that's why I have the Blu-ray. So when I recommend it to people, there's no excuse. I can just give it to you. Like,
okay, so I suppose just a small light bit of background of the film, as we've already gone over its creator. Tokyo Godfathers was created in 2003, directed, of course, by Kon, and was animated by the team over at Madhouse, who we touched on later would go on then to make One Punch Man. See our very first episode of Anime Crash Course for that. Another notable, actually, staffer that I found on this is the co-writer of the script of the movie is Keiko Nobumoto, who was the creator of Wolf's Rain and was also a lead scriptwriter on Cowboy Bebop.
that is the weirdest.
It's more of these it's just these strings that just keep going back to things, like, but just like that, I think that really just kind of shows the caliber, like, between 2003 Madhouse, who was the team that would later go on to like make Death Note, very shortly after.
Their team,
like Madhouse, and I think this was, I think, at the time when they were doing Bones was Full Metal Alchemist. I'm
Bones
side railing. This is getting cut. But yeah, I think like that just shows kind of between Kon and Nobumoto, this really kind of like is and the team over at Madhouse, this is really shining a spotlight on just the quality of staff on hand for this project.
Do you actually know who did the score for this? Because I forgot to check that, but I want a huge shout out to the soundtrack and score in this. It's jaunty and fun. It's so sad. It's everything, because it's like one of the things that sticks with me about this. Just like between Madhouse, Satoshi Kon, and whoever did the soundtrack in this, is just
the soundtrack was done by Keiichi Suzuki. And you're right. Like it's such an oddball kind of, like, as I said, jaunty, but then kind of dark and dramatic when it needs to be. Just like weird kind of elevator pop.
Keiichi Suzuki is a guy who did the Earthbound soundtrack.
I did hear that. Yes, I knew there was something about that. Yes,
that makes complete sense. Sorry to just like derail the whole thing.
No, absolutely. Like, listen again. More threads. Like more threads and more showing more spotlighting the quality. Like this, everybody on this staff knew what they were doing and was perfect for it. Like that weird kind of bubbly, surrealistic kind of sound absolutely just hits the tone on the head here.
Absolutely.
And also, before we go, so what's Tokyo Godfathers about? Well, for a start, it is, if you want to kind of a basic premise, it is loosely based off of elements from the 1913 novel Three Godfathers, which has been the source of several other films, such as the John Wayne film of the same name back in 1948, and, fun fact, 2002's Ice Age.
Okay.
which has been cited
I
to
guess I can see
base.
that.
Which, yeah, listen. Once you know what? Once we describe the plot, the similarities are there. So Tokyo Godfathers
Yeah.
follows our cast of three characters, all of which are homeless, living in the streets of Tokyo, while they find a baby abandoned in a rubbish pile, and spend the runtime of the movie trying to find its parents. Um, so it is somewhere between finding plot points between the three Godfathers and also just Jesus of Nazareth. And this is not subtext. This is something the movie absolutely hammers home by having the very start of the movie be the three wise men talking in a school play production.
Yeah. And even that opening scene is the best children actors. It's children being children. It's perfect.
Just that kind of toneless, pitchless, just it's brilliant.
But it sets the absolute like it sets the mood for the whole film. It's shot so straight and so serious, but it's still pretty funny. Like this movie, despite all the weird, sad topics it brings up, and it gets really sad. It's always got that like smile underneath. It's
Oh yeah,
bittersweet. Yeah.
what? Yeah, like it's as I said. I think at its heart, it's a comedy, but it touches on so many real and hard hitting issues, like as you mentioned, our three leads are homeless, so I touch on the homeless crisis and how Japan views them, but also in our three characters, which I suppose who we'll kind of get into now. So our three leads are Gin, who is an alcoholic older man who left his family. We have Hana, who is a trans woman who had to become homeless for various circumstances, and Miyuki, who is a 16-year-old runaway girl. And all three of them, as being kind of outcasts of society, like Kon really kind of narrows into what it is about each of them that society has relegated to the outskirts, and just kind of really just kind of hits to the core of each of them in a way that is so prescient. And again, this movie is still a comedy. It's how it manages to balance these tones.
Yeah, like in any other film, Jin would be hateful. Like I couldn't see myself liking him in anything else. But the way he's presented and the characterization, you understand every character and their motivation. They like you may not get the resolution you want, but you can understand how they got there and why they continue to do what they do.
Without a doubt,
It's
like
marvelous.
all of them, like they all have faults. So like they're very human characters.
Huge.
Um,
Yeah.
like obviously, Gin, he's a substance abuser, but he's also brash and abrasive and cold, constantly just insulting everyone around him, and then just kind of taking any chance to find a drink and just or lash out at those that have wronged him, like at the the Yakuza boss who
Oh yeah.
who he found out who is part of the cause of him being homeless. Um, but when he does find something he cares about, particularly when he's reminded of his daughter, he shows a tenderness of a loving father, and it's like it's that kind of two sides where he's an asshole, but he's also an asshole that's been ground into the dirt by society, or literally by a bunch of teenagers, as is shown in the movie.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of a violence repeats violence cycle, but like he still has things he very much cares about.
Yeah, it's almost as like the three main characters all feel like they are they have like they know what they need to do and they know how they ended up in the situation, why they're there, but they're either punishing themselves for it or they are afraid of confronting that, and that's like plainly shown to you.
Oh,
Like it's also like if you watch this, you will relate, even if you don't relate with the circumstances. You know the emotion. You know how all of this feels.
oh yeah, no,
Like
like Hana is one of my favorite characters in media. Period. She's incredible because she's so tragic while being still so bubbly, I suppose is the best way to put it. She like knowing that she is an outcast society by virtue of being herself. I think yeah, it's the scene where she kicks up a fuss to Gin in front of his daughter, and she
yeah,
basically has to explain that she had to be the bad guy to give Gin sympathy. And when Miyuki confronts her about that, I was like, why would you sacrifice yourself? And she just basically explains like I've always I've always kind of had to act the bad guy because that's what society expects of me. I'm like, oh God, Hannah, you deserve so much more. You're too
and
good for this world.
yeah, she really is. And talk about the this is 1997 and made by like a straight man in a very conservative part of Japan, and he just has full respect and understanding. It's
Oh yeah,
there's no, like I've heard people say stuff about like, oh, there's the typical camp 90s thing about like how to present like LGBT people, but I anytime Hannah does that, it's when she's playing up her role, essentially the role she feels society has dictated for her,
yeah,
and especially in like her hostess moments where it's
mm,
showing the big campy parts, but also just the strongest character.
yeah. Like it
Just
doesn't feel played up because when she actually has to be sincere, she really kind of gets down to the dirt of it and just kind of you can see her be solemn about that, and it's that reflection that kind of makes her feel very real. Where like because we when we kick off and meet her like like she's always very enthusiastic, very bubbly, very bright. So that's like we just kind of we were told off the bat that that's just her disposition, and so it
yeah,
doesn't feel played off. It just that's who she is as a person. And also like not to say just how exaggerated all of the characters get in this. Like with how serious the topics can get, some of the animation becomes Looney Tune-ish
oh,
when things
the
exaggerate.
running,
The running,
yeah.
some of the faces when when they get like overexpressed, just how like suddenly chins grow about 3 sizes. It's wonderful.
Oh, Gin is like he becomes monstrous at points. Like it's SpongeBob-esque where they do the hyper detailed zoom in on SpongeBob.
Yeah, like
That's what it reminds me of.
everybody's so rubbery when when they need to move. It's wonderful. And again, that's this. Okay, well, to bring that kind of back around then to, as I said, the heart of this being its comedy. Its slapstick is so on point.
Yeah.
Like even just to watch like the first, as I said, the intro of the movie where they go through the trash pile, Gin and Miyuki kick off and just start slapping the ever loving life out of each other like Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny. Then Hannah finds the baby and declares that this is their baby now and that this is a gift from God. And the look on the two faces before the truck pulls up, title card, just it's this perfect score of just the first time I saw that in the cinema, I could not stop laughing.
Oh, I still laugh at that. I like here. I'm just sitting here with the biggest grin on my head. The yes.
Oh, it's so wonderful, and it's scenes like that make me want to watch this year on year every Christmas. And aside from the fact that because it is a movie that is altogether about family, be it kind of found or blood related, and that kind of finding familial connection and love in society, it definitely it is in essence a Christmas movie.
Yeah. Like even without the backdrop of December in Japan,
Mm.
it's it is, but yeah, like I think also the fact this being the only real like Christmas anime uh also makes complete sense with it, because like these are outcasts. You don't exactly think, you know, Christmas Japan, but like everything about this just sort of works to make this like it's an untraditional family. It's a holiday in a land where that holiday is kind of foreign. It's three complete outcasts to society, both like literal and figurative, like how, you know, what each character represents themselves and how they'd be shown in society if they weren't already part of like a forgotten generation, because, you know, they're homeless in Japan.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like it has that underlying current of hope.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's another just kind of interesting topic, because like the reason why wouldn't be like the proliferation of like the kind of the Christmas special like there would be here in the West is because Christmas is a very different thing over there. Obviously, like Christian domination is very, very low for several historical geopolitical reasons. That it's only a very recent concept to their culture because of westernization of very recent decades. Um, so it does, like, especially like Christmas as a Christian Christmas, very new, and it's very interesting that like this is Christmas through a very Christian lens. Um, that doesn't even feel like it just
yeah,
skimmed the cliff notes of the birth of Jesus.
yeah. I didn't even think of that. That just reinforces what I was trying to say earlier. Of like, yeah, this movie is like almost point for point
Oh
the, you
no,
know,
it's as I said,
Christian story.
it's not subtext. Kyoko is Jesus in this movie. Like I think like one of the I'd heard one criticism about this movie being some elements of Deus Ex Machina, being, you know, kind of being played off and just kind of being, you know, coming out of nowhere. But to me, that's kind of the point at times. There is an element of the. I got a lot of this from a video called Satoshi Kon and Why All You Need Is Love. His episode on Tokyo Godfathers by a YouTuber called Breadsword. It's been an hour long and just kind of gets into the history of Japan and Christianization and how that kind of relates into Satoshi Kon and Tokyo Godfather's work. Brilliant video. Definitely recommend it. You should definitely check it out if you haven't already.
I haven't. I'll have to watch that.
Do absolutely.
That's added to the list.
But geez, yeah, where I think I'm at a loss for words. Now I'm gonna be completely open and honest.
I just have so much. There's like, I'm gonna recommend a video that I recommended to you before we went on air here. But if just Google, no, not Google, put into YouTube, every frame a painting, Satoshi Kon, and there is just this like 7 minute, it's about the 7 minute long video that just is a complete love letter to the editing alone of Satoshi Kon, and it gets into some of how like, rather than us talk about the comedy, he presents like he's the only time I've ever seen anyone explain a joke and still make it funny is when he explains the homeless man's death scene in that video. Gets me every time.
Oh yeah. That's like this is the type of movie we're talking about. We're talking about where a homeless man full on dies and it's still one of the funniest scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
And I can't say any more than that without ruining it.
Yeah, I really don't like the story itself is very basic, you know. Three homeless people find a baby and try and try and find the parents. But it's everything it's everything else.
Oh,
it's the characterization.
the characters.
It's the comedy.
And even the scenes, like as I mentioned earlier, like, you know, they go through a Yakuza wedding, they end up in a cabaret club, they end up in a dilapidated house. Like it's just, and the pacing is so pitch perfect. There's never felt like a wasted moment across the runtime.
Exactly. And it's not a short film either. But there's not a wasted second, and I really this is Madhouse at their best. It's not action, but it's the animation of the characters, just like the comedy, the pacing, the timing, everything. The shots are beautiful. Like when the movie takes a moment to breathe, and it just like hangs on like a dripping drain pipe for like a second longer than you think it would, and you're like, okay, it's gonna be
Oh,
good.
it's like
And then
yeah.
it goes on.
There's so many just details. Like another like like another thing that as you watch it several times every Christmas, you just pick up little quirks and little details. Like only on my last viewing did I notice the office lights when the teenagers are beating up Gin, and it's almost like a Street Fighter life bar.
Yeah, yeah, it's
When
going
the lights
down.
the lights on Gin's side go down to one. One of the kids falls over. One of the lights on their side turns down to one, and as Gin gets back up, the lights start. It's just little things like that that you don't notice on the first thing round. That just it's like the amount of effort that went into like just the small details, the minutia. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's just like down to how the characters move, and like every character has a very distinct movement. But you can tell their emotional you can tell their emotional state by their posture. It's like none of it's rigid. Like I've never seen. Well, I'm sure I have, but in talking about this, I'm just going to gush over like everything in this movie is working together. Like this, it's perfect. And I've seen loads of reviews of this film that like give it like 3 out of 5 stars, and people not really being hugely into it, and I cannot understand that. I've probably done more damage to someone's first viewing of this by just gushing over it, but I do not care. It's not every day I get to talk about this movie. It's the best.
Well, I'm glad I have given you this outlet.
Yeah, I'm lost for words here. Just how much I love this thing.
That's exactly it. I frankly don't think there's anything more we can say without just breaking down the whole plot of the movie scene by scene.
I was about to say, I don't think that would do it justice. I think the best thing you can do with this movie is just give someone the synopsis, 3 homeless people on Christmas, find a dumpster baby, literally, and try and reunite it with his family, and just go from there. Just watch it every year. Make a part of your Christmas, or you know, your general winter watching list, and just thank us later. It's the best.
Make a tradition, bring people in, make it their tradition, spread the word, spread the love, spread Tokyo Godfathers.
Yeah, that's it. That's the goal.
That's the dream of this, truly. Well, I think if we
my
else,
gravestone will read,
watch Tokyo Godfathers. Excellent. Well, I think if we have nothing else to add, we shall call it there. So, where in the year 2020 is Tokyo Godfathers? Now, alas, none of Satoshi Kon's cinematic works seem to be available to stream anywhere. It's truly a crime. So, if you have to go get Tokyo Godfathers, it is a physical release only. However, as of March this year, the publisher G-Kids have recently come out with a new, fully updated 4K Blu-ray release of the film, which, now keep in mind this is a 17-year-old movie, has recently only had a dub. So, if you're not a fan of reading subtitles, there is now an English dub. From the excerpts I could seek it and find, it sounds really, really good. It sounds like a lot of care went into the character voices. So definitely check that out if you're not a huge fan of subs. I unfortunately rushed to buy it and ended up buying an old Blu-ray, so I just got the Japanese.
I didn't realize there was a dub release of it. I'm gonna have to buy that, and my brother's watching this. Like that's what I'm doing. It's happening. Also, I saw earlier that Amazon Prime has a lot like Prime Video has Tokyo Godfathers. It's not available in Ireland, but if you have a VPN, that's another feasible way of watching this without having to, do
Oh, I
illicit
did
stuff on
not
the internet.
realize that was on Amazon. Okay, that's your go-to then.
I
If you
could be wrong. I saw it earlier, but that's just if you have a VPN and Amazon Prime, whatever it's asking, I think it's worth paying
I
for this movie.
I definitely like it. You're doing yourself a favor by going out and finding a physical release, even if it's just a cheap old DV standard def DVD. Well worth your time and effort.
Yeah, I'm going to buy that new Blu-ray release because it's got a dub. But the second I saw there was a Blu-ray release of the old version, I just bought it. Like, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Like having it at hand, like your internet's down or something, just throw on a movie and feel good for almost 2 hours.
Yeah, that's and that's what we need nowadays. Truly. Right. Well, I suppose that has been the long and short of it. It's been a wonderful episode. Truly had a blast talking about this, Keith. I'm glad I found someone so enthusiastic about this. Definitely.
I'm glad to have been on this. This may have been the most meandering episode we've had. Maybe not as much as the Helsing one with Dara, but
well,
still,
that's what we got for inviting Dara.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I really enjoyed the death one, and I hope we could have like introduced someone to this.
Oh, believe me, like this episode's getting forced into the feed of everyone on the network. So don't think I won't be showing this to everyone I get a chance to.
Yeah.
So before we go, Keith, is there anything you would like to tell the good people listening?
Watch everything Satoshi Kon did. That's it. If you want to see more from me for some reason, I'm on Instagram as Dry Keith. Keith is spelled Keet, and I have a band called Horrenda and stuff. But really, when it gets down to it, watch the Satoshi Kon films. There is genuinely something for everyone.
Yeah, truly, forget about us. Watch Satoshi Kon.
Yeah.
Well, as always, you can find me over on the network, usually on Nerd to Know basis. And we will see you now for another episode of Anime Crash Course next month. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to a Nerd to Know Media production.